Hi, I'm Joey Lott, creator of Peaceful Possibility. Oftentimes I speak about the end of suffering. And I speak about that because in my own experience, discovering the simplicity of being is the end of suffering. But I want to clarify this because I realize that it can be a bit misleading. It suggests or implies in some ways that there can be some event, something that can happen that you can do perhaps, that will result in no more suffering. But actually, the end of suffering is simply about ending the search for something better, which can sound very threatening to somebody who is searching for an end of suffering. I recognize that. I think that was what held me back from truly recognizing what already is, which truly is freedom. And it held me back from that for a very long time because I was terrified of just meeting this as it is without trying to turn it into something. And that fear, subtle as it was at times, was still so great that I would even turn nothing into something. But finally, there's this recognition that there's only this. There will never be something else. The pursuit of something other than this, something better than this, something, anything other than this, is the suffering itself. So finally, having the courage to cease to look for something else is the end of suffering, because the discovery that there is only this, and this is not suffering. This is nothing, but not a thing called nothing, not something that you can imagine what nothing will be like. It's never that. It's simply this, as it is, completely raw, completely alive, and completely unavoidable. This is already the case. This is not something that you will attain. So notice that you want to end the suffering, and so you imagine that there is something that you must do to end suffering, because you imagine that suffering is a thing. You experience something that you call suffering, and so it feels like a thing that you need to get rid of. But right now, just for a moment, begin to explore what is this suffering. See if you can find the suffering. You know that you suffer, so find out, where is the suffering? Is the suffering in your eye? In your forehead? Where is the suffering? Is it in your knee? Is it in your heart? Sometimes it seems that suffering is in your heart. So look closer, see if you can find it. Find the exact location of this suffering. Find the exact shape and form of this suffering. And begin to notice that all that you can find is just this direct meeting of what is as it is. And then there can seem to be a turning to thought to give meaning to it, turning to thought to tell you what this is, turning to thought to tell you this is suffering. But notice that actually it's just this, whatever this is. There's just this direct meeting always, right now, of whatever is, exactly as it is. That the thought, suffering, is not actually suffering. Still, it seems as though there's some experience of suffering. So explore this. Find where is this suffering. How do you know that this is suffering? Now, just for a moment, recall a time of pleasure. Surely pleasure is the opposite of suffering. So recall a moment of pleasure and see right now, can you locate pleasure? What does pleasure look like? Where do you experience this pleasure? Is it in your knee? Is it in your belly? How big is it? What is the shape? And then again, notice suffering. Where is suffering? Find that suffering. And then again, the pleasure. Find that pleasure. Where is that pleasure? And what you start to notice is that indirect experience. Strangely, there's no difference. Because actually there's only this. And when you begin to see this, this can give you courage to finally just let go. To begin to trust in this, which is always here. Sometimes you call it pain or suffering or pleasure or joy. But whatever you call it, it's actually just this. And this is always here. You can never find a time in which this is not. This is the simplicity of being. And now you see that waking to the simplicity of being is not a thing. It's not an event. It's simply this. There's the recognition that this has always been. In a sense, you have always been awake to the simplicity of being. It's unavoidable. But you can become simpler so that the simplicity of being is evident and obvious directly and immediately in every moment by simply remaining here. And you notice that here, there's no need to seek for an end of suffering because there is no thing called suffering. Notice that in order to find suffering, you have to turn to thought. And thought can come up with all kinds of thoughts. Oh, but there is suffering. What about those poor people who these things have happened to? What about if this happens to me? Surely this is suffering. But notice that that's all thought. This is not to try and convolute anything. It's the reversal or the undoing of all the convolution. It's to simply meet what is directly. And whatever this is, to trust in the natural innate intelligence of this to be exactly as it is. It's not about finding solutions to problems. It's about remaining at the source. Which is already what is happening. So simply notice that here, in direct meeting of this, there is no need to end suffering. Notice that the need to end suffering is only in the imagination. So let go of imagination. Because when you taste this, truly meet this as you are right now, then there's the recognition that even the most grandiose imagination possible is merely a shadow of this. It is only ever this. Even what we call imagination is simply this, arising in this and as this, in this ever-present moment. So until next time, what wonder?